Welcome back to the Innovation Days 2022 after the lunch break. I hope you got some rest, some fresh air and some nice food like we do here in Stuttgart. By the way, what you can see behind me is our direction or our production, and the ladies and gentlemen, they are responsible for light, sound, obviously the images and the video, and also the Slido questions. So right now we have another Slido question for you, and I would like you to scan the QR code with your smartphone. So I guess you can see the QR code on a slide or also on your screen, and then you can scan the code and then you can take part in the next question, because we want to know what are your top criteria when shortlisting potential supply partners for a new project. Because the supply chain, this is the next topic for our next panel, and I'd like to remind you that afterwards you have the possibility to ask your questions by clicking on the Q&A button, and then you can write down your questions. So, and I guess right now you can see our panelists, really small, there behind me, and now we will experience who will guide us through the panel supply chain.
Dr. Thomas Uhlig is Managing Director and President of Global Supply Chain Management and has been working at Trelleborg Sealing Solutions for over 20 years. He will be joined by Professor Dr. Konrad Saur and Jürgen Bosch on a panel discussion on how secure is our supply chain. They will be conferring on ensuring reliable, robust and efficient business operations for our customers. They'll also be discussing how past supply chain experiences and challenges such as the global pandemic, transportation and material shortages have influenced the overall delivery situation, and how we can improve and secure the future of manufacturing and logistics when delivering products to Trelleborg Sealing Solutions customers.
Welcome back after the lunch break. We thought we would put an emotionally loaded theme after lunch break to help with congestion or rather digestion. So it's all about logistics, and we see the first comments coming in. Good communication, cost, quality, reliability, availability as key criteria. And we want you to continue to submit your criteria, how you select vendors and identify the best partner for along the value chain. Good communication. That was the first thing that I saw coming in. Jürgen, you represent the customer perspective in our organization. What is it that keeps our customers, what is it that keeps your organization up at night these days?
Yeah, thanks, Konrad. Of course, good communication could be two ways. One is being good in communicating with our customers. The other is, are the messages we have good ones or not? And of course, what we see today is very challenging times in terms of supply chain availability, making sure we get products to you as our customers when you actually like them, and not when we can manufacture them, which is not necessarily the same. So big challenges, a lot in terms of agility and flexibility that we have to look at.
No, we all hear about port congestions. The Suez Canal incident is still in our mind. Now we live in a world with raw material shortages, labor shortages, tons of challenges. Thomas, you represent the delivery side to keep our promises. What are the key challenges that you face from a supply chain management perspective?
I mean, Konrad, thanks for that. The two key ones, certainly you mentioned them, is the shortage in raw material, but also in labor. And if I speak about labor, it's not only in our production sites and our third-party suppliers, it is in logistics, in purchasing, all over we face shortage of manpower. And what currently is one of the biggest challenges, we stress all our people, and that is across the entire value chain, across those areas, but also in sales, and your area, Konrad, also in research and development, certainly. I mean, what are we doing? We have one thing which is, you heard it this morning, we think global and we act local. And think global and act local means for us really, we have global processes, and that makes us today, gives us a very good transparency and a visibility on our entire supply chain, down to our suppliers and even their sub-suppliers. We know exactly where our customers are located and where our suppliers are located. And that gives us a possibility to look further into nearshoring what we are doing, localization of production, those kind of things. We have done that before, but we do it certainly with a lot more emphasis. Furthermore, a key thing is the planning, and you heard this morning we're in a volatile world. Planning is certainly something we have highly invested in the past 2 years, I would say. We had a planning process before, a robust one, but it is now the end-to-end planning. It is exactly knowing on a 12 to 18 month what do we really need, and to create from this sales plan a supply plan. And we have very tough S&OP meetings. We take consequent decisions where to invest in people, where to invest in machines. And then it comes to a point which is not perhaps the nicest one, that's prioritization. If you have a shortage in material, what do you need to do? We have a customer prioritization in ABC customers, and overlaying all of that is growth customers or gold customers. And if we need to prioritize, certainly this is something. The last point, perhaps, what I learned in those 2 years is partnerships. And that is, if we speak about nearshoring, there might be something coming up later. If I speak about transportation, we have good partners, and we need to work together with our customers on the one hand side, but also with our service providers in order to reserve capacities. So I would say that's perhaps the most important thing we have learned, to work far closer together than before.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks, Thomas. And it really is confirmed with what we get here back as feedback. You can't read that, so I give you a couple of further buzzwords that come back. Besides communication, it's reliability, quality, continuous improvement, cost, of course, absolutely key, honesty, sense of urgency, availability. So going back to you, Jürgen, what are we doing these days? I mean, Thomas mentioned prioritization. Is it that simple?
Yes and no. I mean, of course, to start, we have cases where you as our customers sometimes can't finish big machines, pieces of equipment, because there are C parts missing, which is very annoying, of course. You mentioned a bit what are the reasons for that. And of course, we have basically only 2 ways of dealing with it. One is, if you have a lack of resources and material and capacity, the only thing we can do is prioritize and make sure that we use whatever we have in the best possible way. But then, of course, the other thing is to find new ways of capacities, resources, other materials, and I think that's the other big one, is to be much more flexible in our supply chain. Mm-hmm. And today we have a situation where I would say in most cases materials are linked to production sites, and that's of course something where we are working, I would say, since 3 years very actively on becoming more flexible. But of course it's not sufficient if we work on it on our side. We really need you as our customers in that. So I would say 95 out of 100 seals that we sell, they are qualified. So there is either a design qualification or a material qualification or both of it on the customer side. And that of course requires efforts together to make sure we get alternative materials and products qualified in the applications.
Have those alternatives become easier to get approved?
I think what we see is there is a lot more openness from our customer base to invest, and it is effort. I guess in the past we saw a lot of cases where we come and we say, well, we will no longer be able to supply you. Then the first reaction is, but we have a contract and you're obliged to. And then there was a lot of pushback initially, until you then go to management level and say, yes, we have a contract together, but we still can't supply you because the material is not available. So, and I think when our customers realize the urgency, that's when I think we can start to qualify alternative sources. And of course, the current times, they make it in one way a bit easier to discuss those topics. But on the other hand, of course, it is big decisions because someone has to say, yes, from a technical perspective, in my application, I'm happy if you supply me B instead of A, what you have been supplying up to now.
And I guess the message that we want to portray is we don't want to put the gun on your breast and say you need to approve these alternatives. What we want to do is do that in a more upfront way, where we can take the necessary time, thorough processes, that we do things and have a plan B in the drawer. I think that is the standing invitation that we would like to send out to you today. Speak to us about approving alternatives. That gives us the flexibility. We are also investing in near-source shoring, in other solutions, second sources, to help with the guarantee of supply. So Thomas, if I understood you correctly, the biggest issues that we are addressing is through processes, robust, stable processes, good planning, also relying on what our customers are telling us, and prioritization. What else are we currently looking into?
I mean, it is certainly the logistics
Yeah.
globally. In terms of logistics, it's a very tricky environment. We have spoken at lunch with one of you guys, or several even, and we are all global companies, and we face, you see it here, a small summary, we face port congestions all over. We're in Los Angeles, but also in Shanghai, in Ningbo, if we are present in China or in Asia. And now we also see the threat of China and Taiwan in the middle of the Taiwan Strait. Who knows what will happen there? And those are all congestions. We have a shortage in transportation capacities and a backlog in containers. The lockdown in China might come up again with a zero COVID strategy, so we don't know what is happening there really. All of that has huge impacts on our export. On top of that, we also know that if we have a shortage, it's the pricing. And the pricing in terms of logistics and transportation is really increasing significantly. So we're not standing still. We also work on this one here. I give you an example, a real one. I was at the meeting in Sweden 2 weeks ago, and I was called in for potential rail strike in the US. And in the US, we normally ship our goods from Asia into Los Angeles, and then we have a central logistics center near Chicago, or in the middle between Chicago and Detroit. And we do that with a railway. And the issue is if there's a strike, we are somewhere stuck. The good thing about this is now, whereas 2 years ago, I would have really stressed, today you need to have a balance between stressing and having a structure and those partnerships. And we have those partnerships in place. We called DSV, we reserved the capacities, and we would have gone, if the strike would have happened, with a truck to Chicago. So those are the things we are doing. We are reserving capacities up front. We are looking into different transportation modes. We are shifting from ship to rail, vice versa, and we look into different transportation routes. The key thing, though, is certainly not to be too much exposed to Asia, to other countries. It is really the nearshoring, to find the right balance between nearshoring, localization of production, and still being a big global player.
So it's a comprehensive tool mix, and it's working with reliable partners, I understand, that we then can build and trust on. So our own critical mass, that we do have some purchasing power, does help.
Exactly, it does, certainly, yeah.
Now we are speaking about alternatives, near shore sourcing. How much of that is reality, Jürgen?
Well, we are at the beginning, I would say, because traditionally, of course, when we talk about complex parts, you have one set of tools in one location where you produce your parts. And actually, I have to say, up to 2 or 3 years ago, a lot of our customers, when they approach us, the question was about low-cost sourcing and content, and how can you make sure your balance is right on a cost side. This has now completely switched. We had last week a big meeting with one of our aerospace customers, where some of you might have used the product to fly in here. And 3 years ago, how can you balance in low cost and make sure that your mix is right from a cost perspective? Last week, it was all about how can you ensure that you can produce local for local and produce where we need the parts and not somewhere else in the world because of all the uncertainty. So I think there's a change in perspective from our customer side, but from there to actually be flexible, it is a long way, because of course we have to validate products and materials, and if we've done that, then we have to replicate tools, we have to, in some cases, buy equipment. If you want to buy a machine for injection molding, up to recently at least, you look at 9 months, 12 months lead time. So it is a process that doesn't happen within a matter of 2 or 3 weeks. It's normally, let's say, depending on what the solution is, a process of half a year and longer. But I guess one of the good things is that we have a lot of test data and a lot of knowledge what is a suitable alternative. And I guess my example is when we come and approach our customers quite often, of course the first point of contact is in purchasing, and then when you get a request, okay, I want to change the material, the product or whatever, and purchasing goes to the engineers at our customers, they normally have other things to do than qualify new seals. But then if we come to our customers and we actually have basically an information pack where we can say, okay, this is what you got so far, this is what we would like to change to, and let's assess together, is there risk involved or not? And then in those cases, we actually come to conclusions in a very good and positive way.
Now, and I think this is where we need your help to help your challenges in the future. What we are making as an offering, we call it strategic material portfolios for segments. And I see a couple of representatives from within these segments where material approvals are absolutely critical, because with food safety, medical, whatever have you, that is very important. So what we want to work with you in the future is bundle volumes on flagship materials that give us greater leverage with our raw material partners to secure the supplies. I mean, today, how many different elastomer materials do you think we have? Just give me a number. 1,000? I would be lucky if it was like that. 8,000 different elastomer recipes, and on top of that, 4,000 plastic recipes. That complexity is way too high. And of course, you enjoy that because it is about availability, and this is how we grew together. Going forward, we would like to reduce that complexity because it means we are largely exposed to raw materials, but also to smaller ingredients, the additives. It's not always the polymer, which is a great challenge today. Sometimes it's the specialty, the secret sauce that we put in, and all of a sudden REACH and other regulations stop the availability of those. So we would like to bundle our purchasing volume based on segment material portfolios that have all the standing qualification with the comprehensive test data that Jürgen was just speaking about.
Konrad, talking about the regulation side, because we didn't mention that early on, but that's of course one which becomes bigger every day in terms of requirements, a lot of national requirements that we have to cope with. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that, what we do and how we are set up as a team to cope with it.
Yeah, we do have a global team of 7, 8 people that do nothing else than tracking regulations and tracking the chemical composition of our materials. As you can imagine, with 12,000 materials that have up to 20, even 30 ingredients, that becomes a challenge. Our big ambition is that we are able to identify an early warning system. And with, say, the REACH recommendation or TSCA in the US, there is usually a lead time of 8 to 10 years after when a regulation comes into force. So that's something where we try to be upfront and then enter into a dialogue and say something is happening. Of course, we are all thinking about what is happening with the PFOA regulation in Europe. We work hard to protect the key materials, the FKMs, the PTFEs, that they are exempted from that regulation, and we are pretty confident that we will do that. And by the way, thank you very much. We have reached out to you to get use cases to declare essential use of these materials, because no plane would fly. We could not process food safely if we would not have these materials, just to give you 2 examples. And so that is really where we want to work going forward. But the complexity further increases. And I think the word we have used today a couple of times, we live in a VUCA world, Thomas. How are we addressing that?
Yeah, we heard it this morning already. I will not go in detail now what it means: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And I mean, we have one advantage in all of that. We have a global footprint. We can show alternatives to our customers. So that is really the good thing here. Still, VUCA, I mean, that is the thing here. The interruptions get longer, they come shorter, and it is really something we cannot wait any longer for the storm. We really need to learn to dance in the rain. And that is something we need to be prepared for that. We need to have a more proactive, a more flexible supply chain, certainly. And what comes apparent is having a risk management. And this is what we have learned in the past 2 years now. I think all of you have a risk management. Some of you have a risk management function. You have dedicated people for that. What we have done is we have really looked into that, what can happen. What happened in the past 2 years? Why did it happen? And what could we have done better? Could we really have been set up for that? And we did not only look into material shortages, we didn't only look into labor shortages, we spoke about geopolitical issues. I mean, there's far more now about risk management. In the end, it is really the continuity of a company or the sustainability of our business if we would not have a risk management. And what about cyber risks? I mean, who really has a plan to cope with the cyber risks? And we had a customer whom I spoke 2 weeks ago, and they were affected by a cyber attack. And those are the kind of things we really have to look into. What about, you guys spoke about regulations, compliance, new laws. I mean, that goes through the entire supply chain. We know about Belgium, the closure of the 3M plant, FKM, which we were heavily affected by that. So those kind of things, they happen, and we really need to look into those. You can go furthermore about your intellectual property, how to protect that. And those are the kind of things we deeply need to look into that.
So that is part of our lessons learned, that we need to have more robust processes, more type of a scenario planning, but of course everything based on the demand forecast that you as our customers provide us. So the longer range and the more reliable the forecast is, the better our planning processes are, the better our allocations are. And if we could bundle volumes, our purchasing power for critical raw materials improves even further. That's why we would like to have that discussion with you, as we can't do that alone.
And I just add to this one here. From a purchasing perspective, I mean, I know it is crazy to ask for a sales plan for the next 12 to 18 months. Who knows really what is happening? Some of us say it's continuing the growth. In some sectors like automotive, it is stagnating. The world is volatile. But still, please help us to get the best possible forecast. And from a purchasing perspective, I really see a bit of light at the end of the tunnel if I look into the KPIs, and I mean from a raw material perspective. Labor is still probably the biggest issue to get the people in, and don't ask me where they are all. We all have the issues, the restoration business. Where are all those people in the US? From a perspective of material, it seems that we get track on it, and if I see the numbers, the pure KPIs, then our arrears are going down. The backlog will get solved very soon. So that's just.
So Thomas, you're optimistic. What else is missing, Jürgen?
Well, I think when we talk about risk management, the next step is to really discuss it together. And a lot of what we've done is sort of how can we make sure that whatever we have promised to our customers, we can deliver. But knowing that this will not be 100%, I think it's important that we do risk management and risk assessment together and see, okay, where in our relationship are things that are very critical and have a high risk. And that's the one we can solve together in various ways. I mean, it starts from individual stocking plans to whatever measures we can take to be able to at the end, have products available where we need it.
So, in a nutshell, I think we have a fair understanding of what we would need to, or not what we do. We are not at the end, certainly not. We definitely would like to increase our leverage with our raw material partners. That's where we need your help in approvals of new materials, bundling volumes to materials going forward. But certainly we would like to open up the floor for questions that you may have, both here in the room as well as online. And Janine, you will help us with that, of course, again.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. I find it really, really honest and open. Thank you for that, for all the insights. As you already said, now is your time to ask questions. And of course, you can ask your questions via the chat, and then they are coming here to the tablet. Do you have any questions right now to the panel here, which we can discuss?
Also, be controversial, be critical. We are not claiming that we owe the truth. That's what we do.
Yes, there we have a question, and you will get the microphone.
Yes, Gunther Koin from Atlas Copco. I have a question regarding sustainability. You're talking about local for local. We have also a global spread when it comes to production and distribution center. Do you have a kind of model which you take into account? If you look for localization, how to calculate it? Where are the gains coming from? Do you have a cost related to that? Because now today, for us at least, you produce still a lot in Malta. You fly it over because, as you say, prioritization. Today, often it's too late, so we need to send it over by air freight. It costs a lot of money. Are you looking to that in the future, that you can localize more and that you have a kind of model for sustainability to make the right decision, where to produce what?
Spot on question. Today, we are in a crisis mode. And unfortunately, then we compromise. Supply security reigns over cost and efficiency. Because the security of the supply chain, the avoiding interruptions, line downs, we evaluate as a higher good to protect our customers. But long term, you're absolutely right. Those are the considerations that we need to play. And it's about a prioritization. We will not ever be able to localize everything. It is about the right mix, doing the right things for high volume products, securing the supply for the critical components. And again, here, that is only something we can do together with you. But certainly we have that on our radar screen. We do these type of calculations. Today, the cost impact is fully understood, unfortunately. It's painful to see how we and you are spending excess amounts of money to overcome raw material and labor shortages, in a nutshell.
I give you an example, one from last week or the week before, which I have discussed. It's just a business case which we have opened. In the Americas, as you spoke from a global world, in Americas we are highly dependent from Asia Pacific because we have a lot of our supply which is coming from Asia. And we are working highly on localization here. And what we have done is we will now ship or relocate the first parts into Mexico now, where we have lately made an acquisition. You might have heard about that. So really local for local here, that we get not only from a sustainability perspective clearly, so we have looked into what does it mean in terms of stock, cash, impact, transportation costs, landed costs, customs and so on. So yes, we have clear calculations how much it would cost. And then if it gets more expensive, which can happen if you go away from Asia, for example, then I think which is very important in those partnerships that we discuss it. We look together into that. We have a more sustainable delivery, but on the other side, we might pay at one or the other side a bit more, and then it is partnership to open the book and to look into that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Other questions here from the audience in the room? Actually, we have a question in online. So what materials are the easiest to get hold of and what are the most difficult?
Well, no material is easy to get hold of. Pretty much all the polymers are on allocation. Fortunately, we do have, as a key user of some of these polymers, we do have leverage with our raw material suppliers. But that has limits. I mean, we probably get the guaranteed amount, but if we come in and say we need the double, we will also not be able to do that. Particular challenges these days are on the on PTFE, on FKM, on FFKM, pretty much because of environmental regulations. The production capacity of FKM and FFKMs have been seized. So it's environmental regulations. It is two of our suppliers were sourcing key ingredients from Russia. That source has dried up. So those are the fluorinated materials are the ones that are probably the most burning platforms. HNBR is tricky as well. I mean, I could continue with the list. because, and we have to be clear about that, our friends in the polymer industry, in the chemical industry, use the opportunity to do a portfolio cleansing. I'm not saying that with finger pointing. Well, actually, I'm finger pointing. And we, unfortunately, do not have the leverage if one of the big players is just discontinuing a material because they just take the opportunity, as they haven't had a lot of commercial success with those materials, they will walk away from it. And unfortunately, this is where we don't have enough leverage. And going forward, we want to create greater leverage by enhancing the value chain leverage that we can get together with you.
You mentioned Russia as a source for resources, and a similar question, is Brexit having an issue with the UK supply?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Is Brexit having an issue?
Brexit, good old Brexit.
I think, of course, England is now a low-cost country. That's one of the takeaways in a way. I think there was initially a phase where everything has to sort of re-establish itself, but I think that's pretty much over now. So we don't see any issues these days because all the processes have been adapted, and it's working perfectly, I would say.
Yeah.
Nice, good to hear. Any other questions from the audience? Konrad, you said, I guess you have more than 8,000 recipes. So would you try to make things easier, or would it be easier to change recipes and to have like 4,000 recipes?
Absolutely. I mean, today I have 728 EPDM 70 Saur. There is a justification to have some of them with healthcare and medical approvals, some of them with food approvals, because sometimes they are mutually exclusive. There are some ingredients you have to use in one industry and can't use in the other. So there is probably a justification for 100. But given acquisitions and us having been or still being a one-stop shop, there is too great complexity.
Yes.
I think, knowing the rule of three now, we've got strategic materials. We would like to really focus on those coming from the segment needs. Then we have core materials that are bread and butter. And then we have niche materials, which we really support when we need to. But we hope we don't need too often.
I think that's a very fair conclusion.
Yeah. Perfect conclusion words. Thanks for that. So if you have any further questions, then you can also reach out to the expert via mail or also outside, because right now we have another break, and 10 minutes to 2 we will see us again, and I would like to give you a short overview about the upcoming sessions. We will see Konrad again here in forum number 1, and we will talk about the environmental footprint, impact on product and design. Then we have forum number 2 over there, additive manufacturing, accelerate time to market. And then the forum number 3 will be streamed, electrification, the new normal. And forum number 4, food pro materials, ensure safe sealing in food processing, will be streamed as well. So we will see us again 10 minutes to 2. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.